Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode review. This one's going to be for Season 3, Episode 12 and 13, Battle for New York. Mid-season finale for Season 3. Now, this episode, both episodes, made for a solid mid-season finale. The episodes were good, but not great. Obviously, great episodes of the show being, of course, the Season 2 finale. So given that this was effectively the bookmark to that was the Invasion of New York, this is the Take Back New York arc, definitely didn't have the same impact of those two episodes. And I think much of that comes down to the lack of involvement of Splinter, Shredder, and Karai in these episodes. But I don't think that's specifically a criticism of these episodes. I don't think these episodes are worse for not having them. I just think the Season 2 finale was better because it had them. I think that's the way to say it. For what this episode did, it was solid enough. There was nothing massively, I think, impressive about these episodes. It was a fairly standard 2 episodes where they get rid of the Krang. I don't think the Krang are gone from the series overall. It definitely didn't feel like this is the end of the Krang in this series overall. They're probably going to be gone for like a season or half season. We may even see them at the end of the season. So that was a little bit kind of like, oh, well, you really can't make your minds up on anything in this series, can you? No villain is gone for good. And that's a really bad thing for this series to be doing. But I think one thing I did really like, I like that most of the episode did take place in Dimension X, and that allowed for one of the best things that probably the last season did, and that was this whole savage Dimension X Mikey being a genius in that world in terms of having the perfect instincts to live and adapt perfectly to Dimension X. And so he was incredibly useful, incredibly funny, I think, throughout the whole that whole part of the episode, because much of the humor, I think, in this whole show overall doesn't quite work, but the way they played the Dimension X Mikey off was really fun. Just all these little things like, oh, what are we gonna do next? And Mikey just knows. They don't have no idea how to control Krang vehicles. Mikey knows, of course, how to pilot the Technodrome and how to alter the Technodrome so that its fuel is actually retromutagen. And just Mikey was overall fairly important in these episodes. It was his mistake that led to the creation of the easy way to make retromutagen, and then he was really important throughout the entire episode. But what the main I suppose running thing throughout these episodes, in addition to this plan to take back New York, was the idea of the Mutanimals, this new team led by Slash, with Leatherhead, Pigeon Pete, and Dr. Rockwell, the psychic monkey guy. These characters coming in and revealing that they've been in the city while the Turtles have been away, basically rebelling against the Krang. And they're kind of been organized together by Kurtzman, who came back into the series to organize some stuff. Wasn't in it long before he got injured and was taken out and just asked them to work together. But the main focus of this episode in terms of character stuff was Leo and Slash at odds over how to lead, which was interesting enough. I thought, like, they didn't have to do that, and they at least tried to do something with the characters, but I think the primary issue I had was that at no point, I think, in the previous episodes that Slash has been in, did they ever attempt to create this drama between Slash and Leo that they're at odds over leadership. Slash has always been, in episodes that he's been in, has been related to Raph, because Spike was Raphael's pet turtle initially, and now he's obviously mutated and he's a leader of his own right. I like the eventual payoff that you are basically addressing Slash's history as Spike, in that he learned to be a good leader from Leonardo, clearly. So that was an interesting thing, in that they were at odds over what to do. Leo was obviously taking the more ninja approach, he was taking the more frontline combatant approach, and it ended up working together in the end, that they both led their own teams effectively. Slash proved himself to Leo when he put himself on the line to save some other members of his own team, and that brought them together towards the end of the first episode. And they were perfectly fine for the rest of the episode. So it was interesting, but definitely not the most powerful character stuff that we've seen in the series so far. Um, Other things of note, there was a lot of fighting in these episodes. A lot. Like, over 50% of this episode was fighting. And I, re- I haven't really been going crazy about the fights of late in these episode reviews. And in addition to the fact that the in the woods episodes and stuff like that didn't really have that many good fights. The other problem is just that the fights themselves aren't played as particularly intense or dramatic. Like, realistically, we should be going into any of these fights and thinking that any of these characters can die, that if they're a little bit off, they're going to get injured, hurt, and potentially killed. And I think a big problem with this, and this not coming across, is the music. I don't think I've ever, in the previous 2 and up to now seasons of reviewing the show, have mentioned the music, because it's just so not notable in this series. Apart from the intro song, there's nothing incredibly memorable about the music, and they don't do any special things with the music in fight scenes to get across the emotion of a fight scene. Like with the Legend of Korra, even with like animes like Naruto and Bleach, the music plays when a scene is meant to be, when a fight is meant to be intense, dramatic, or just, this is a character showcasing a new skill. This isn't meant to be really intense, this is just a character showing off a new power or something like that. You can get those sort of emotions across in fight scenes by using the music, but there's too much just random techno music playing in the fight scenes that is just so not notable. And I think they could do a lot just with having more kind of emotion come across through the music. And they've done it at times. Like, I think that I seem to remember some decent music whenever Shredder and Splinter fight, and that gets across their dynamic really well, in addition to what they're doing with those characters. But just the turtles themselves, I never feel anything for them when they fight, because I know they're not going to kill them off. I know for the most part they're not really going to put them at risk unless it's against the Shredder, really, which they've done in the past with Leo and Shredder, and that's clearly set up for the next time they really meet. But as it is now, they haven't really done anything in this episode to make it go across as incredibly dramatic. Like, especially when you have like your main villain of this episode be Krang Subprime, and he's just such a caricature rather than an actual character, that he's just not a threat at all as a main villain. And because it was only like Krang Subprime and not Krang Prime involved, I think the Krang are definitely coming back at some point. But the main thing in this episode is that they accomplished what they set out to accomplish, and that is that they've got the Krang out of New York City, they've saved all the people, they've changed the people back who were mutated, including April's father. I don't think the change in the formula of the retromutagen is going to affect Karai at all. I don't think they would have mentioned it, I think, if they had. But that's still some stuff that they can address going forward. But the main thing that they have now is that things are effectively back to normal now. Like, there's still the thing of, like, when are the turtles going to find out that Shredder has Karai, and what's next for the turtles now that they've taken back the city? I assume it's still going to be mainly addressing Karai, but I'd also assume that the turtles think the Krang are probably out of the picture for a while. So who is the enemy next, and what's happening? So I would hope that the next episode acts sort of like an epilogue of the big events from this episode, in that they just address what they've accomplished, maybe make a return to the sewers, maybe create a base somewhere else, and just have an episode where the characters just, relax after what they've done and set up stuff going forward. Where that's what I'd almost want to happen next episode, where the turtles are only in it for a little bit, and then the focus is primarily on what Shredder is doing with trying to cure Karai. But I doubt it's going to do that, because I think the next episode is about Casey and some underworld type thing. And speaking of Casey, he was barely in the episode. April was barely in the episode, because they just said, okay, you guys look after Kurtzman with me, and Splinter was going to perform surgery or something like that. Which given that April's my favorite character in the show, I didn't like that they just completely took her out of the action. Especially when her psychic powers have kind of been a big deal of late. I wasn't necessarily sure why they specifically took her out, but you know, for it being a mid-season finale, for it being a very intense kind of set of episodes, there's not a lot really for me to say about the episodes beyond what I said already. It was better than everything else this season because something of note happened. The Krang are now out of the city. That's a big deal, and they can now go from a better kind of standing point than they had in the woods, and just progress from here and do something interesting. What I want them to do is realize that the interesting stuff that they have going on is this Karai, Splinter, Shredder dynamic. That April is still a really interesting character with everything that's revolving around her. Her father's now back in play as a character. Have him reveal some stuff about April's actual mother, since we don't really know a lot, and stuff like that. Note that none of what I really said involved the turtles, which is my final point with this video. The turtles, I've held back a lot in a lot of videos about saying this, but it's become a big problem now. The turtles just have nothing going on character-wise. Nothing interesting, really. Leo kind of has this kind of, not obsession, but more of an interest in Karai than the rest of the group. And that's about it in terms of character focus on these characters going forward. I suppose Leo and the rivalry with the Shredder, I suppose they're trying to do that as well. But Mikey, Raph, and Donnie, there's nothing of note. And for the main characters, that's really bad. That it's been 2.5 seasons and there's nothing massively interesting with these guys. So I hope that just in the second half of the season they set up something with the characters, and do with that. Like as I said, like I suppose going in between seasons, I almost wish what they would have done is just said, okay, Leo's going to be out injured for a while. It's going to be a three-man group, and then we'll bring April along on some of the missions while Leo recovers, and he has his plot of his own. And so that straight away you address Leo has an arc of his own. April now deals with basically being the fourth member of the Turtles, and then the other three Turtles deal with, okay, our main leader is out. We've had multiple episodes where we've actually addressed who should be the best leader. Now we're in a position where that guy can't be the leader, so which of the three of us is now going to be the leader? But they didn't go down that road because of the position that they put everyone in the whole in the wood thing. And just, yeah, it just comes back to the Turtles. They're fun as base characters and who they are, but there's no development there whatsoever, and no obvious setup for development going forward. So I just hope they really improve on that. Other than that, I don't want to make this really negative ending to the video. These were solid episodes. They're, as I said, there was some really cool stuff. Something of note happened that really changed the dynamic in the series. I liked the Mutanimals and that whole team recurring again. Slash and Leatherhead being the main two. The monkey guy and the pigeon, not as main characters, but I like that they brought these guys back in a different setting and stuff like that. So, I get that it wasn't season finale level of good, but it was still better than the rest of the episodes in the season. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on Battle for New York. The episodes haven't aired on TV. I think Nick.com just put them up early, and obviously other places have them now, so that's why the episodes are out earlier than you'd probably expect. So other than that, yeah, that's been the video review. Thanks for watching, and bye.